as I was making this video, as I was getting the gameplay, there's 4 different characters on this list. All right. There's 3 cyborgs and 1 grid. A lot of people wanted me to add grid, so I added grid. Okay. So the bottom 2 characters, I was getting the gameplay and I noticed I didn't unlock all of their talents, not their gear talents. I'm talking about the talents that you can change with credits. And so I was like, you know what? These 2 characters already suck. They're the bottom 2 characters. I might as well just make my life a little bit easier and, just get those talents so that way they're a little bit better. I opened them and I ended up getting epic talents for both of the worst characters on this list. This game just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. You know what? Start the video. Pedro, stop eating. Start the video. Today we're going to be ranking every cyborg in Injustice 2 Mobile from worst to best. As always, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started. Starting off our list, coming in at number 4 is going to be Unbreakable Cyborg. Unbreakable Cyborg was the first gold character I got in Injustice 2 Mobile. And even then, I don't feel any sort of bias or nostalgia towards this character just because this character is pretty bad. If we go look at his passive, what it will do is whenever Unbreakable Cyborg dies, it will revive him with 25% of his health. Now, the reason why this isn't really that great is because I've said this before, I really don't like passives that make a character tanky. And the reason why is because, first of all, if you're going to have a tank, all you really need to do to make a character a tank is level up their gears up to level 40, add a bunch of health, max out their defense, and you're even going to have enough space to max out the fast attack as well. And that's it. There's nothing else. You don't need anything else. Sure, if a character gets a passive that makes him tanky, it's going to be good because that character is not going to die. However, realistically, as long as you reach about 30,000 health, maybe 40,000 health, and you max out their defense, you're pretty much never going to die. So having a passive that's going to make you even more tanky, it just seems like a waste. I would much rather go use a character like Shazam, Dr. Fate, or Power Girl that has a far better passive that's going to help the entire team and is going to help me do a lot more damage. And even though they're not going to be as tanky as Unbreakable Cyborg, the chances of my characters dying anyways is going to be super low. So ultimately, if I don't use Unbreakable Cyborg as my tank, I'm not really going to be losing too much. And if I replace him with a character like Dr. Fate, it's actually going to be far better because that character has a way better passive. Moving on to his special abilities, his special 1 does Power Drain and his special 2 has Stun. And even though Power Drain is one of my favorite effects in the game, this is actually pretty bad because it's going to be a hazard and it's going to be really, really small, which means that it's going to be difficult to keep the opponent in there, and it's also not going to be power draining too much. And as for his special 2, which has Stun, I'm really not a big fan of Stun because a lot of characters nowadays have so much resistance. If you want to get Unbreakable Cyborg's gear and shards, they're in the campaign, but you can also get them off of raid drops. Although, I wouldn't really worry about getting this character because not only is he the worst cyborg in the game, he's also one of the worst characters in the game, which is why he's coming in at number 4. Moving on to number 3 is going to be Grid. When Grid first came out, a lot of people really liked the idea of this character because he looked like he was going to be a really great tank. However, if you look really closely at what his main passive is supposed to do, it's actually really, really stupid. Okay, so the main part of Grid's passive says this: losing more than 15% of health over 1 second from basic and swipe attacks activates a 200% current health shield for 10 seconds, and it has a 3-second cooldown. So when I read that, I see 2 really big problems. First of all, this only works for basic and swipe attacks. That's a really big problem because tanks are supposed to be able to take any damage out there. But even then, let's assume that this did work for special abilities. It would still be a really bad passive. And the reason why is because I don't understand how I'm supposed to build this character. On the one hand, if I lose too much health too quickly, then this passive activates. But that's not going to be a good thing if I lose too much health too quickly because he's supposed to be a tank. So if I put a bunch of defense and a bunch of health for him, he's not going to be losing a lot of health really quickly, which makes this part of the passive completely useless. So in other words, Grid is supposed to be built like a tank, but he's supposed to lose a lot of health really quickly in order for this part of the passive to trigger. So that really doesn't make any sense. but at least he has some extra passives to make him a little bit better. Not that much better, but a little bit better. Grid is also immune to power drain and immune to stun from tech opponents, and he disables all Cyborg opponents' passives at battle start. He also gets 25% power generation per tech opponent, and he gets 300% damage for Special 1 and Special 2 to Cyborg opponents. And if we go look at his special abilities, his Special 1 and his Special 2, like it says in his passive, do more damage towards tech opponents, and if his Special 3 knocks out any Cyborg opponent, Grid will heal himself and he will gain a 200% damage increase to his basic and swipe attacks. But this will only last for a few seconds. So with all that being said, I really don't like the fact that Grid mainly wants to target tech opponents and Cyborg opponents. I do understand why this character was made like this, because that's kind of how he was in the story mode, but that's definitely not a really good reason to be giving me passives and buffs that do this, because there's many different characters out there that are not tech opponents and that are not Cyborg opponents, and I want to be able to be doing a good amount of damage towards everybody. Or at least, if you're going to give me a character that's a tank, make him a really good tank. But every single buff, every single good thing about Cyborg, it's almost like there's like an opposite force that completely takes away the entire buff and the entire point of having that passive or buff. I'll still rank him a little bit higher than Unbreakable Cyborg, just because again, it doesn't take too much to make a really good tank, and also, at the very least, Grid does get some extra buffs for fighting certain opponents, but he's definitely still not a good character, and I do not recommend trying to go out and get this character. With all that being said, let's move on to number 2, which is going to be Silver Cyborg. Silver Cyborg is definitely a really big upgrade compared to Grid and Unbreakable Cyborg, and that's actually kind of funny because Silver Cyborg is a really simple character. So what his passive does is whenever Cyborg is tagged out, he will regenerate 2% of his health every second, and he also gives the entire team a little bit of extra health. And if we go look at his special abilities, his Special 1 does power drain, but it's not really going to be that great just because it's a hazard, and the hazard isn't really that big, and he doesn't really power drain too much. His Special 2 doesn't have any buffs or effects, but if we go look at his Special 3, it also doesn't have any buffs or special effects, but it does have a secret multiplier, which means that Silver Cyborg is going to be doing decent amount of damage. And that's a really cool thing to have, especially since Cyborg regenerates health whenever you tag him out. So even if you build this guy as a damage dealer, you're really not going to worry about your health too much. If you want to get the shards and gear for Silver Cyborg, you can get it off the campaign, but unfortunately, because he is a silver character, you're not going to be able to get them off of raid drops. This character is a really fun character to use. You're not going to be breaking any damage numbers, but he's still really fun. However, it is a little bit hard to recommend to go build this character just because getting his gears up to level 60 and level 70 and maxing out this character is going to take a lot of gear resources and a lot of time. You're most likely going to want to build this character just for fun. Now moving on to the number 1 spot, we all know who it is. It's going to be Justice League Cyborg. Justice League Cyborg is absolutely bananas, bro. This guy was one of the very first characters added to Injustice 2 Mobile, and he still holds up to today. If we go look at his passive, he's immune to stun, and whenever he is targeted by stun, he will gain 3 power bars. And he also gives himself and his Justice League teammates 300% more damage on their basic attack hits. Also, keep in mind that Justice League Cyborg is also a part of the Justice League team, which means that you're also going to be getting buffs from characters like Flash and Aquaman. If we go look at Justice League Cyborg's special abilities, only his Special 2 has an effect, which is Power Drain. But honestly, I'm not really focused on his special abilities because the amount of basic attack damage that this team does is really, really high. I know they're not going to be breaking any damage numbers, and I know that the League of Anarchy team does more basic attack damage, but still, for how old the Justice League team is, they still hold up pretty well. And I remember when this team was first added to the game, it became a really big problem in Arena because this was literally the only team that you would fight because everybody was using this team. And so NetherRealm decided to add Nightmare Batman. And even today, you're still going to see this team pop up in Arena. The Justice League team is also my favorite team to be using every single day for Arena, for Campaign, for Champions Arena, for resource missions, for pretty much everything, just because they're able to defeat their opponents really, really quickly, which means that you're going to be able to farm game modes really, really fast. If you want to get Justice League Cyborg shards, it says that you can get them off of the Arena, but this character was taken out of the Arena a long time ago, and he also doesn't pop up in the Arena store, which means that unfortunately, you're going to have to get his shards off of chests, but at least you can get his gears off of raid drops. Anyways guys, with all that being said, I hope you guys have a nice day, stay safe and stay clean, and I'll see you guys later.